Hey everyone, this is Julie Murphy, and today I'm going to scan in a drawing that I would like to then size and fill to put on embroider on a towel for a friend. So let's get started. First, I have my scanning frame with my drawing on it, and I make sure that I've got my little green magnets away from my design so they don't interfere when I go to adjust it. So once I'm happy with how I have this done, let's go over to the screen. At our screen, we can either choose embroidery and go into my design center. I can also, from this screen, just choose my design center. Once we're in the design center, we have a choice of scanning, doing a line scan, or an illustration scan. Since I have a line drawing and I want to use the lines as an outline, that's what I'm going to choose. So I chose line scan, and now I'm going to scan my frame and I'll choose OK. And there is our design. Next, we want to bring our arrows in. And this just helps get rid of some of the background noise. We want to bring them in without actually touching our pumpkin. Let me show you why. If I go like this, do you see how it changed from a dark black to a light gray? And that just means that we've lost some of our image. So we want to get close without getting too close. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's say OK, and we'll move to our next screen. And our gray image looks good, so we'll set it. And now we have it in our screen. Some people get alarmed when they see our green magnets on the screen, but we can actually choose to remove those as we're working by just lightening our background image and seeing what we're planning to stitch. So you can see there we have it where they're gone, and it just shows us what it's going to stitch. Now, this is where you need to, if you're going to make an adjustment to the size of the pumpkin, this is where you would want to do that. Because once we start messing with the stitches, it doesn't really want us to go back and adjust the size. So let's go ahead and hit size. It tells us we have a 4.85 by a 5.67. And because I'm putting this on the towel, I want it to be a little bit smaller than that. So I would use my size arrows right here and I'm going to change this down just a bit. Usually I like to keep, when I'm putting something on a towel, just because I know I've got about 6 inches to work with on the towel, this is for a hand towel, then I would never want this size to be more than 4.85. Let me take it down one more notch. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. So let's go ahead and we will say OK. Now we're back at our screen and we're ready to zoom in because we need to see if we have any extra marks on here, anything that we need to erase before we start doing our lines. So we're going to zoom in. That's probably a little too close, so let's go to about 400. And just looking at this screen, I see just a couple of marks that I want to deal with. So once I see what I want to do, I'm going to choose the eraser, and I like to either work with this small circle or a small square. Once we've chosen our small square eraser, we'll start away from our line and just bring our little square. Let me see if I can zoom the camera in so you can see a little better. I start a little further away and just bring my square in and take out anything that I see that I don't want. That little section looks good. Let me zoom out again. So I'm going to move my viewing window square up here. And I'm going to just check the various areas of our pumpkin. Okay, and I don't know if you can see this section here, but now we're going to Now see how I made that disappear? Don't panic. let me show you what we can do. Down here we just have our undo arrow, and that puts everything right back the last thing that we did. So let's try it again. Okay, we'll move our viewing window, continue to look at our design. I don't know if you can see down here at the bottom, we have a couple of little things. Let me zoom in for you. We'll come in with our little square. And we're just going to kind of look one more time before, and I'm just doing this by dragging this red square around up here in the viewing window. So we're just really looking for big things that stick out. Okay, once we're happy with it, we'll zoom back out. And now we're going to go into our line property area. And we're going to touch our notepad. And we have a choice of what kind of stitch we want to do on that line. If I was wanting to do a candle wicking or a zigzag, a single stitch, or for this one, I think I'm actually going to do the triple stitch. Choose a color. And to do this next section, we don't want to have the pencil, we actually want the fill bucket. And it's not going to fill it because we're in the line property. And then we'll just touch somewhere on that line. Okay, now you can't really see what we've done, but to know that you've actually done something, if I touch it again, listen for the sound. That lets me know that we've already got that particular stitch filled in for our lines. Next, before I go to fill in these sections, I want to add a shape where I'm going to add a letter on our embroidery screen. So here we have a shape button. And I can go with the shapes from this screen, or I can change it to some other closed shapes. And for this particular design, I think, let's see here. I'm going to go back to the other closed shapes. I think I'm going to choose this kind of rounded corner square. And I'll say OK. Now look how big our shape is. Obviously I don't want it to embroider bigger than our pumpkin, so I'll use because this has the red box around it, I'll use my size button. And I'm going to use this actually decreases our size and this increases. So let's just bring that in. And you can see our size changing up here as well. Now let me increase it because I want it to be, let's just put that on our pumpkin and see how the size looks. Okay, so now before I do anything else, I want to make sure I have it positioned correctly so I can use my arrows over here to just make minor adjustments moving it around. I'm pretty happy with that where it's placed, so I'm going to answer OK. And now before I move to the next section again with the fill, I need to tell it what I want it to do for stitching that, for the stitching this shape. So I'm going to go into my notepad, and again I'm going to choose the bean stitch. This time, because I don't want it to do it at the same time I'm doing my outline for my pumpkin, I'm just going to assign it a red, and that just tells the machine to stop. Now when I go to stitch it, obviously I'm not going to stitch it in red, but it gives me a chance to figure out once I'm in the embroidery section what I am going to do. Okay, now remember when we did our pumpkin, we want to be in our fill, our bucket, and this time I'm going to tell it to change this. And can you see that? It changed it to our red color because that's letting us know that we've changed and actually added the stitch we wanted to the outline. Now we're going to go in and start filling in our sections with our fill stitches. For that, we're going to go into our property region. So we'll choose our notepad. In our region property area, we want to choose our fill stitch. And for this one, because I'm going to use two different colors for the sections of the pumpkin, I think for this one I'm actually going to choose, remember this isn't what I'm going to stitch, it's just to allow me to work with it a little easier. And so I chose an orange, and now I don't want to use the paintbrush, I want to use the bucket. So let's now touch the area we're working with, and there's our first fill stitch. Before I go on to any of these other sections, what I do want to make sure is that I have the underlay in place so it gives some support to our embroidery. So we'll hit next, and you'll see down here we have our undersewing, and we want that on, and that just gives us a little bit more support as these stitches start to fill. And we'll say set, and then we will return, and we're ready to touch another section. And again, I'm going to check it one more time. I think it's a good idea to check in between each section and make sure that, and so you can see it's off, so we want to go in and turn our undersewing on and set it. Turn that on. Now for the stem, we're going to choose a green color. We'll touch our stem. Go next. Turn our undersewing on and set it. So now that we've got our regions filled in, we're ready to move on to the next section. And we can hit preview. We'll say OK. Now what we have is a 3.79 by 4.34 design that we're going to set and add to our embroidery. Okay, and now it has taken us, you'll see we have an embroidery button down here, and it's taken us to our embroidery section. And the next thing we're going to do is we want to add a letter in our box. And if we want to just save the design at this point without the letter, we can hit memory and then put it in the pocket. And now when we go into our embroidery, we'll have this pumpkin with this blank box, so that if we want to add other initials or something else in the box, we can. So let's go into add, and we're going to choose our letters. And for this one, let's just see what our letters in number 2 look like. And her last name, it starts with a G, and that's a big letter, so let's go into a medium, and so hit set, and let's move it into our design. I'm pretty happy with that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to hit embroidery. And we need to then load up our hoop. You can see we have 14,000 stitches that are going to stitch out. It's going to take about 30 minutes on our towel, and we're ready to go. It's going to start with our green stem and work its way through the colors, and you know, we'll be able to see our design as it gets ready to stitch in this section here. Now we have the towel all hooped up. I'm using a magnetic dime frame, and I've got 2 layers of tearaway stabilizer on the bottom. I have my towel, and then I have a piece of stick-on wash-away stabilizer. And then around the outside of my hoop, just to add extra stability, I've actually pinned up around the outer portion just to help hold my towel in place a little bit more firmly. One thing I want you to see is the placement sticker. When I hooped up my towel, I had my mark of where I wanted it to be, and I got ever so slightly off on my positioning. Instead of worrying about it, what I've done is I've put a positioning sticker on, which, you know, some of us refer to it as a little snowman, and I'm going to use the positioning sticker on our screen to get my design exactly where I would like to have it. So let me move back over to the screen and show you what's going on. We are back at the screen, and it's ready to start stitching, but a couple of things that I want to do before I start. One, I want to work with that positioning sticker. So I'm going to go into Edit, and I'm going to hit the little snowman button, and it's going to move very quickly once I do this, once I tell it it's okay. But it's going to recognize the sticker, and it's going to reposition my pumpkin to be in line with that sticker. And you can see here's the center, and now it's going to move. It is actually scanning to find the sticker. And there it is. It has positioned my needle to be right over top of the mark. Let me show you the towel. And there it is, right over top of the positioning sticker. It does remind you to make sure that you do remove that sticker. You don't really want to stitch over it. Peel that off, and we're ready to go to the next step. So I'll say okay. Next thing I'd like to do before I start stitching is actually place a basting stitch around my design. So there's this little flower in our edit screen, and if I touch that, it adds this little secured border around our design. Once I have that there, I'm ready. I like to stitch using this plus minus down here so that I can see what the machine is asking me to do. One thing you're going to see is on the way I designed the pumpkin, I had these alternating colors. And as it is stitching, I've actually decided to make a design change partway through. I actually don't want to do a different color here, so what I'm going to do is actually stitch it all in the deeper orange color. The delineation will come about when I go to do the bean stitch that we gave it. That'll be in between the pieces or the sections of the pumpkin. So let's get back over to the sewing area. I'll lower my presser foot, and I'm ready to start stitching. You can see that the machine is now ready to stitch the line, and so all we have left are the lines. Now let me just show you what we have left. We have the line stitch, we have the outline for the box, and we have the letter. So now we'll just go backwards, and let's go back over to our sewing area. So I'm going to lower the needle and press start. And there we go. Our pumpkin is all stitched. Our outline is done. I have removed the stitches for the basting, and now we're just ready to run it under water and remove our backing, and we'll be all set to go. Thanks for watching.